First, we just wanted to say thank you to everyone that was praying for us, knowing that we weren't in China alone, on the other side of the world alone, but you cared about us, you prayed for us. We honestly felt your prayers. It made a difference. A huge focus of our time out there was learning to invite Jesus into everyday circumstances, knowing that we as believers, all of us here, that we bring God's kingdom with us everywhere we go, and that makes a difference. So Kirsten's going to share a quick story, then I'll share it after that.
Hi, so as he mentioned, my name is Kirsten, and as he was talking about Jesus inviting him into our everyday life and our everyday situations, that's exactly what he used me in. And so basically, while we were in China, a big ministry opportunity that we had was helping at what's called an English corner, which basically is where a bunch of students gather and we practice English and we play games and we ask questions and we basically build connections with everyone. We build relationships. And so as I was there, I ended up making relationships with one of the students named Angela, and we became great friends, connected really well. She's what I would consider a person of peace, so someone I can connect with, someone who I can have fluid conversations with, just an easy relationship. So I remember the friendship that we had progressed as the time went on, and every time I would see her, the next time she would have another gift for me, and it was just a great relationship. And so nearing the end of our trip, I invited her over for dinner, and we were making dumplings, and it was really awesome. And as we were making that, I just felt like the Holy Spirit was prompting me to be bold and ask her about her faith. And so I did, and I asked her, hey, so honestly, what do you believe? And I had kind of skirted around the question before, but I'd never actually point blank asked her. And so I asked her, and she basically said that she was Buddhist because her family was Buddhist, and because she was still under her dad, she believed that she still had to be that, even though she didn't really believe it. And she really wanted to know who the one true God was. So as I was talking with her, she knows a little bit of my story, and so I asked her, you know I'm a Christian. Do you have any questions about Christianity? And she began to ask about how man was made, which was the perfect opportunity for me to bring her into my room. We sat on my bed, I opened my Bible, and I went through day by day of creation. And I ended with, I went all the way to where man was made, and then to how the fall happened. And then I brought her to the gospel, and I started sharing the love of Christ with her and how much he loves her. And as I was sharing that, I had a vision of me sitting at her feet and praying over her feet. And I was like, okay, God wants to grow a toe or something. And so after I shared the gospel, I asked her, what do you think? And she said, well, it's a beautiful story. And I said, well, it's not actually a story, it's true. And so I began to share that with her. And then I asked her, is one of your legs longer than the other? She said, well, I don't know. And so I said, can we test it out? And so she was like, sure. So she sat up against the wall, and I pushed my hands up against her feet to see if there was a little bit of a difference. And there was. And so I took a picture for proof, and I showed her, and she was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. And so then I said, can I pray for you? Because I believe that Jesus wants to love on you. He wants to grow your leg out so it's even. She said, yeah, sure. So I prayed for her. And a millisecond later, the Lord grew her leg out. And I took another picture, and I showed her, and she started freaking out. She was like, oh my goodness, this is magic. And I was like, no, it's not magic, it's Jesus. And he loves you, and he wants to be with you. And so the day I got home, and she knows I'm a Christian, so the day I got home, she actually was messaging me, asking if we can talk weekly and keep in contact, which is huge because she's not really friends with me, but she's friends with Jesus inside of me, and she feels the love, and it's awesome that the Lord's able to use me and share that with her.
So good. Last Monday morning, we were woken up to a call at 7 a.m., and it was a friend of ours calling to say that the father of one of the Bible school students there was in the hospital, and they needed us to go and pray for them. So Gunnar, Emily, and myself, they're the other co-leaders there. We hop into a car with our good friend. He's a Chinese pastor, and we had a translator with us as well. And as we're driving, he tells us what's happening. So the previous day, the father, his name is Will, he had been battling with gout in his body for the last 10 years. And because of that, has faced a lot of physical discomfort, a lot of physical pain. And then recently, on top of that, he was diagnosed with diabetes. And the pressure from the diabetes and the gout, as well as the emotional pressure and things he was going through, he felt as though he couldn't go on any longer and made an attempt to end his life. So that was Sunday. The next morning, thankfully, his family had found him, and he was not successful in the attempt. So they took him to the hospital. It was now the next day, and they asked if we can come and share with him and be with him. As we walked into the hospital, as you can imagine, it was a very, very heavy environment. I don't speak a lot of Chinese, but the first thing that I hear the wife say is, God doesn't listen to our prayers. She begins to weep, and the father is crying. The Chinese pastor begins to comfort and pray with them. And it's one of those situations where, honestly, you don't know what to do. It feels so much bigger than you, but you're just saying, God, we need your help. What are you saying? What are you doing? And just as the father Will begins to share, you just feel this huge weight of shame that he's holding on to, that what he had done was so dishonoring to his family and so dishonoring to the Lord that he just didn't know what to do with it. And all we began to do is we were waiting on the Lord to say, God, what are we supposed to do? He just said, just share the truth with him. So we began just to tell him the truth, that God loved him, that God forgave him, that God was for him, that his family loved him. And as he was listening to this, he begins to cry. And then in his own words, he begins to reject all the lies that he was believing, the lie that his life didn't matter, the lie that he didn't matter, that he wasn't valuable, that he wouldn't be forgiven, and all these things. And then he changed directions a bit. And again, in his own words, begins to proclaim the truth, saying that I am loved, I am forgiven, I am redeemed, I am restored. God cares about me, my family loves me, and this is not the end, but this is the beginning of my life. And you saw this man that as we walked in, he was broken and just completely torn apart inside, that you begin to see hope in his eyes again. And as he was crying now at the end of the hour as we're with him, he now says, these are now tears of joy and tears of happiness, because he knew that God was with him. He knew that God was for him. It's so, so beautiful. And though we're still believing for his physical healing, if you can be praying for him, that would be awesome. It was honestly one of the biggest miracles that I have seen, to see someone literally come back to life and know that they have more life in front of them. It was so beautiful. One more quick story. A good friend of ours named Brother Will, he and his wife are Chinese pastors and church planters. They've grown up in southern China, and now they've moved to a bordering country that we used to call Burma, now called Myanmar, just next to Vietnam. They've moved down there just actually last year. And right now in Myanmar, there's lots of, honestly, just chaos going on. They're in civil wars. There's multiple different military powers and factions that have risen up. They're fighting against each other, fighting against the central government. And within that, the normal average person is just left without any answers of what to do. The little town that they're in, they said that there's like tons and tons of children living on the streets, many of them without clothes. The average family there only eats one meal per week, as there's not enough food to go around. They said there's a number of children that ages 12 and under that are often stolen or sold into drug or sex trafficking or put into one of these different military power groups. They've seen a girl that was just 3 years old one time that was taken into this military group to be given a gun when she was old enough to hold it, and thinking, I have a niece that's 3 years old, and just that imagery is, I don't know what to do with it yet. But just a couple months ago, as John and his wife wake up in the morning and say, God, what are we supposed to do? They're saying we can do something with what they have. So they met a woman that had a young daughter. She, I believe, is 2 years old, that she wasn't able to care for her any longer. So she offered to John and the wife that, to give her the daughter in adoption. So they took her in. They were more than willing to help. And after just a few weeks of caring for her, the mother had to come back to them and said, I need my daughter back. And they said, well, what's wrong? How can we help? What's going on? And she said, I don't have enough money, so I need to sell my daughter. They said, well, what can we do? We want to support you. Is there a way we can give you money? If we find the money, how much was it for? And she said, it's for $500, but it's already done. I just need to take her with me. So they gave the daughter back. There was nothing they could do. And every day they're seeing situations like this that just seem fake because they're so terrible of what's happening. But they're having to wake up and they say, God, there are so many problems in this world, but you are bigger than these problems. You are lighter than this darkness, God. What are we supposed to do? What are you calling us to do in response? And this morning, as I'm sharing these stories, I'm not sharing them to just make us feel bad or to shame us into doing something. But the truth is that Jesus has called us to be the light of the world. He said, the city on a hill cannot be hidden. Go and let your light shine. And my request for us today is that just like Will and his wife, that we would say, God, there's a lot of problems in this world. There's a lot of darkness in this world. but you're lighter than this thing, God. You are bigger than these issues. And what are you calling us to do? Because not all of us can go and live in China or live in Myanmar. Some of us can, and maybe some of us will. But all of us can pray. Most, if not all of us, can give something to help them financially. And within that, all of us can do something. And God is calling us to do something, whether it's here or there or somewhere else, to follow his response, knowing that we bring his kingdom with us. At the end of the day, that God has victory, but he's inviting us into that story with him to bring his light and to bring his love to the world.